having respectful disagreements actually strengthens relationships and creates a better understanding. And I know this may be hard for other people to see, but there's truth in everything. And there's truth in different people's opinions and so forth. And just being able to learn from somebody else without cutting them off or throwing them away because they see something differently than you is insane. And it doesn't get you anywhere, and it doesn't get them anywhere. You're basically burning a bridge for no reason. By being able to understand different opinions, even if you don't agree with them, creates a better understanding for yourself. Hey guys, I'm back with another episode of Mental Wealth. This podcast is used to express thoughts, experiences, and lessons. I aim to be as transparent as possible. If you enjoy an episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and tell a friend. Thank you. Hey guys, welcome back to Mental Wealth. In today's episode, I plan to talk about how to disagree with somebody respectfully. Let's get into the topic. So it made me want to make an episode about disagreeing with somebody respectfully. It's just seeing how people disagree with each other, and if this follows up on my last episode, but just seeing how people disagree with each other, and since they have differing opinions, they completely disrespect each other also. And I'm like, it's one thing to be able to disagree with somebody, it's another thing to disrespect somebody. And what has became more important to me as I've grown older is the understanding that everybody's not going to think of things the same way you do. Everybody's going to have different opinions, and experiences shape opinions. With us even having different experiences, of course you're going to see situations in life and plenty of other things different, but just don't disrespect each other. Because you get nowhere, and you can ruin relationships, friendships, plenty of other things by just disrespecting each other. I think it's good to talk about a time where I had a disagreement, but we worked through it. I had to go back into politics, but a buddy of mine, of course, we see the world differently. Of course, we have different experiences that shape our opinions. But I was more so wanting to vote one way, of course, and he was wanting to vote another way. And I think the great part about this was I allowed him to have a safe place to express his opinions and didn't attack his character. I wouldn't even call it attacking, but I would disagree with different things he was saying, not the person, because at the end they were friends. And we don't know these people. I mean, your elections and stuff come every 4 years, so of course it's going to be more drama and more inherent issues that I see is just a ploy to divide the people. And this is where I stand on politics anyway. I see politics as a way to divide people and to make people see how much they're different and not how much they're similar. And I feel that a lot of people see the world this way, and this is what has held back the people. I mean, even when you think, I had to go back and still to keep talking about politics, but inherently in America, they try to tell us it's 3 classes of people, but it's really just 2 classes. It's the elites and everybody else. It's not really a middle class. So of course we all have similar experiences and of course similar opinions, but politics is a way to divide people from seeing how they're similar, and they focus on how they're different. But it was just great for me and my friend to be able to work through this whole situation. And of course, I mean, he's still one of my guys today, so it's not like I look at him any different because he wanted to vote a different way than me. But I think this is what is very important, just because even when I look back at like this past election, and you had people cutting off family members, uninviting people to cookouts, and blocking people, and all kinds of crazy stuff over politicians neither one of the people know. I could understand if you have a personal relationship with a politician, but if you don't have a personal relationship with them, then cutting off somebody you do have a personal relationship with is insane, because you don't know the person. So how do you get rid of a real friendship for an idolized figure? And that's another thing in this. That's another horrible thing in itself, because I feel like a lot of people are starting to idolize politicians and so forth. And that's one of the biggest sins that you can have, is idolize another person. I mean, they put their pants and shoes and everything on the same way you do. They do everything the same way you do. So they're human, and so humans make mistakes. I think it's important to talk about a respectful disagreement. And a respectful disagreement is about expressing differing opinions and not disrespecting the other person. And I think this has became completely mixed up in today's society just because you have a different opinion. Even when I get on Twitter, I hate being on Twitter now because it's just constantly it's filled with bigots and people just talking shit about plenty of other groups of people. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, Catholic, Islamic, or whatever. I feel like we were sent here to love each other and to build communities, and it's hard to build community with people who think like that. And even just being able to accept that somebody has a different opinion than you, I think it's hard for people to be able to accept people have different opinions from them. So they try to force people to be able to think like they do or see the world the same way they do. And that's being selfish, and that's impossible to get somebody to see the same world you do. I know the way I see the world is completely different from how other people see the world, and how I see everything is completely different than what somebody else may see. So that's also why I kind of made this podcast, to be able to talk about these issues and be able to fix the problems that we have, or at least give people somewhere to start. Having respectful disagreements actually strengthens relationships and creates a better understanding. And I know this may be hard for other people to see, but there's truth in everything. And there's truth in different people's opinions and so forth. And just being able to learn from somebody else without cutting them off or throwing them away because they see something differently than you is insane, and it doesn't get you anywhere, and it doesn't get them anywhere. You're basically burning a bridge for no reason. By being able to understand different opinions, even if you don't agree with them, creates a better understanding for yourself. And if you see the world one way and somebody else sees the world another way, why not try to find a way to find common ground? Or now, you don't even have to find common ground. It's just finding different ways that you guys see different things. And being able to accept that, okay, we're not going to see eye to eye on everything else. And I think a lot of times we just get caught up with we get more so caught up in how different we are and not how similar we are. And the focus of today's episode is to give people techniques and how to disagree constructively. I think it's important to go into the dynamics of disagreeing. The biggest thing with disagreeing is why disagreements escalate. This might be the biggest part of this. Disagreements can escalate because of emotional triggers and people being defensive, misunderstandings and misinterpretations, lack of active listening, which I talked about last episode, and personal attacks and insults. And so by having these 4 different aspects of disagreement, it completely shuts off your ability to be able to listen. Especially, I've noticed what a lot of people are emotional triggers. People find themselves emotional triggered by somebody else or by whatever somebody else is saying, so they completely shut down. And when they shut down, if you're easily offended, you'll never be able to get anywhere in this world. And I think it's important to realize what emotionally triggers us and how to navigate this. Like, you can take a step back, you can come back to the conversation, you can try to talk about the conversation without mentioning whatever triggers you, or you could start with explaining to somebody why it does trigger you. And I think without doing none of this, you're not able to grow the conversation, and you're not able to help either person. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people I disagree with. I completely disagree with them, but I don't go into it looking at what I can't get from them. I go into it looking at what I can learn from them. Because I can learn a lot in disagreement. And you learn a lot in disagreement. You learn how people handle different situations through disagreement. And a lot of people are emotionally immature, so they're not able to be able to disagree with somebody and not take it personal or insult the person or attack the person. And a lot of things are misunderstandings, especially with humans. The way I see it is, I might understand something another way, you might understand something another way. So it's important to talk about the different ways we understand situations, so it keeps the misinterpretations out. What is also important is the importance of perspective taking. And this starts with understanding the other person's viewpoint, recognizing that there may be multiple valid perspectives, and I got 3 up. I'm going to get to the 3rd one. And avoiding assumptions and stereotypes. And I know that the world is, like I mentioned earlier, we understand the world from our own viewpoint. It's harder for us to understand the world from somebody else's viewpoint. But if you want to be able to grow as a person, it's important to try to understand the world from somebody else's viewpoint. and why they react to situations different ways, why they handle situations different ways, and so forth. And it's also very important to recognize that there may be multiple ways to do the same thing correctly. I remember the other day I watched a video, it was a short video of these two young girls doing math, and they were doing multiplication, and one young lady was able to do it in 2 steps and the other one was able to do it in 8 steps, but they both got the same answer. And I think this reflects life and what we're able to go to. There's multiple ways to do certain situations or to handle things, but we tend to think that if it's not our way, it's wrong. And this is selfish, and this is mainly just selfish, especially if you're not able to at least want to see it from somebody else's point of view. It's also important to talk about the role of respectful disagreement. And it's not about winning or proving somebody wrong. And I think this is what has been so detrimental to our current environment. Because, I mean, just because I'm right, people think that means somebody else can't be right. Or just because they're wrong, people think it makes them right. And this is completely inaccurate and wrong. It's not really about proving somebody wrong. It's about finding common ground and creating an understanding and maintaining a healthy relationship. It's not about winning. And I think that might be part of the competitive society we live in. I think that has helped escalate this, that I have to win, I have to prove you wrong, and why can't we both prove each other right in different ways? It's important to get into some techniques for respectful disagreement. It starts with active listening, just like I touched on last episode. This starts with paying full attention to the other person's point of view, paraphrasing and summarizing to ensure that you understand what they're saying, and just asking questions, especially clarifying questions. Without asking questions, you won't be able to fix your own things that you have a problem with, or your assumptions may be getting in the way if you just don't ask the question. I know a lot of times that's also a big problem in today's society, that we just don't ask questions. And if we do ask a question, we tend to ask it in a way that puts somebody on the defensive and not being genuine and just curious to understand, okay, why do you start with this, or why do you see it like this? And we don't do that. We just make assumptions and then just get emotionally triggered. What is very important is using I statements. I tell people this all the time. Instead of saying you made me feel some type of way, say I felt this way when you did this. And by reframing conversations with I statements instead of you statements, it helps not put somebody on the defensive. Because if I go into the conversation with like, you did this, you did that, and so forth, the other person has to get defensive. And it makes it very hard for them to be able to listen to the conversation and be able to give you constructive feedback without being defensive. And once you get defensive, the conversation is done anyway. But this starts with expressing your own feelings and opinions without blaming or accusing anybody. And then focusing on your own experience rather than attacking the other person. Just like I said, I felt this way when you did this, instead of you did this, and so forth. What's very important also is focusing on the issue and not the person. This goes by addressing the specific point of disagreement, not making personal attacks. And also avoiding generalizing things or stereotypes. I know the world is kind of built on stereotypes. They're like, all right, what is it? I'm black, so what? They think I eat chicken. I love fried chicken and I eat watermelon and so forth. I mean, that can kind of be a stereotype, or various black stereotypes, or various white stereotypes, or Asian stereotypes. I mean, there's not many stereotypes that help. I don't even think a stereotype helps people. I think it shuts off your ability to be able to see people as human. I think we've gotten very far away from that too. What is also a very important technique is to remain calm and respectful in tone. Tone is everything. I could be screaming about something, and I could be talking about getting ice cream, and I could be screaming, but it automatically makes people abrasive and get tense, and it creates tension in the situation instead of, okay, this tone. Because you can say some crazy, wild stuff. You can completely disrespect somebody, but if your tone is calm and respectful, people won't see it that way, or it makes it harder for them to do that. But even just growing up, and I watched my parents argue, and it would turn into screaming and fussing matches and stuff, and then of course it never got anywhere. I just learned that, alright, when I disagree with people, I'm not going to scream at them, because the first thing people want to do is, especially being a man, things can turn physical. So It's just like, man, like I don't want to, even when I disagree with my friends and stuff, I don't scream at them. I just be like, yo, bro, like I felt this way when you did this, or like, bro, why you do that, and so forth. I don't really try to go into it just screaming at people because you get nowhere, and it just makes somebody get defensive. Anybody in their right mind is going to get defensive, and so it's about controlling your emotions and avoiding raising your tone or even insulting somebody. And this has been the bigger part of my own personal growth, because now when I disagree with somebody, I won't insult you. But if you insult me, then I'm more liable to just quit being friends with you, or even just getting rid of the relationship with you. Because I know if I wouldn't insult you just because I'm mad or I see something differently, then why should you have the right to insult me? And this is also about setting boundaries. And I talked about that the episode before the last one. So I'm trying to make sure the episodes build off each other. But it's also about using respectful language and your body language too. I mean, if I just sit there like this and you're talking, I'm just like, man, I don't. If I handle the situation like that, then you're gonna do it back to me, and so we both got nowhere. So I think it's important is just to give people the respect that you want for yourself. What is also very important is finding common ground. It's important to look at areas of agreement and build on them. And so even when I go into disagreements, all right, these are the things that we both agree on. Okay, let's talk more about that and not more about what we don't disagree, we are disagreeing about. And seeking compromise and solutions for both people. I think, just like I talked about briefly, people think their way of doing things is the right way to do things and the only way to do things. And so it's important to navigate this and talk about this, and it's important to talk about your feelings. What is very important is navigating challenging solutions, dealing with emotional triggers, recognizing your triggers, and taking a moment to calm down. Just calm down, get a drink of water, take a deep breath, whatever you do to relax yourself, but just make sure you calm down. And communicating your needs respectfully. Now you can communicate your needs, but if you don't do it respectfully, then the other person doesn't give a damn anyway. So it's important to communicate this in a way that's respectful for both people and not insulting somebody. What is also important, additionally, is handling disagreements with authority figures. And so this is what I learned, especially reading that 48 Laws of Power. And they talk about, don't outshine your master. I think that was like the first law. And then some guy got beat to death literally in the first chapter or something. Because him and the king, of course, disagreed. He was the guy was like an engineer, and he was like the best engineer in the world. So, and basically, the king's way of doing things was of handling the solution was wrong. But instead of the engineering going about it in a more respectful way, he basically tried to outshine him by just giving like, all right, I'm more knowledgeable in this field than you, and so forth. And so the king literally made the guy strip naked and they beat him to death. So it's just like either way. And what I took away from this is it's a correct way to disagree with authority, and there's a non-correct way to disagree with authority. And it's important to not berate somebody because of the disagreement. And of course, choosing your battles wisely. My guy should have just chose the battle wisely. He should have did whatever the king said and just been like, all right, and let it fail that way, and not just go into it and just try to show how smart you are and how much of an expert you are in the situation, because the king didn't care about it. He just wanted the thing to get done. What is also very important with disagreeing with authority is presenting your case respectfully and professionally. And this is what I've learned handling various situations. Even when I see people get into it with police and they get pulled over, and even I hate to go back into my situation, but when I got pulled over a few weeks ago, I literally got pulled over. I'm 9 times out of 10 pretty sure I got pulled over just because I'm black. But the way I handled the situation was so well that, I mean, the guys just let me go. They're like, all right, I mean, we thought he was doing something, but of course he wasn't doing anything. Like, they literally pulled me over and said my third tail light was out. As soon as I got home, I got my tail light checked out by my neighbor who's a mechanic, and he was like, there was nothing wrong with your tail light. Then I went to get an oil change, and they looked at my tail light. Of course, I got a second opinion, and they told me there was nothing wrong with the tail light. And they even told me themselves. They were like, yeah, he probably pulled you over just because who you are. And I understood this is because that's how I felt too. Because I'm like, all right, you pulled me over for a tail light. Why is the other officer getting out the car, looking all in my windows and trying to find stuff? But it's just the way I handled the situation. Like, okay, they get to the car and they're like, license and registration and a host and the other stuff. And they tell me it was because of the tail light or whatever. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. And So I give him the license and everything, and then he was like, "Oh, that's a nice bag," and I'm like, "Oh, so you're one of those guys." So then, as I'm reaching in the bag, of course, I open the bag in a way he can look into it too. And so I'm not even trying to even get on defensive or whatever. I don't want to. I've seen this movie plenty of times. I don't want to end up in this situation. So the whole time I just had like a nice conversation with the guys. They're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And stuff like that. And I was just like, "Yeah, man, I just left church. I had a nice service today." Of course, I was raised to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am to everybody. So, of course, I was yes, sir, no, sir, and so forth. And as I'm showing him the bag, he says it's a nice bag. He can't nobody say I'm in there reaching for a gun. So, of course, I mean, they just let me off with a warning and told me to have a nice day. I told them to have a nice day, and that was it. But the situation could have went way differently if I just cussed them out for pulling me over for some BS. And I already knew it was BS anyway, but I was just like, let me take the high road, because I could have made the situation a lot worse by the way I could have handled the situation. And yeah, so I'm getting into what is also important is disagreeing in group settings. And so this involves just respecting diverse opinions. And the older I get, the more important this is for me. Just because, of course, I grew up in a black household. Majority of the people I grew up around were black. So I don't know the different things that people grow up in Asian households or white households or whatever you are, these different households. I wouldn't know. So I think it's important to try to be able to listen to an opinion that's not yours, and be able to listen to people who don't look like you, and to not cut somebody off or get emotionally triggered in anything you do. I try to not be emotionally triggered by anything because it helps me be able to see the world clearly. And by being able to respect diverse opinions on different situations, it gives you different point of views. They give you different ways to solve the same problem. And I know it's a lot of people, a lot of different cultures or whatever, they all have the same, we all have different issues. We have different issues but the same problems. And I think a lot of times we just get caught more so up on the different issues and so forth that we go through. And what it also helps me navigate these situations is trying to not dominate the conversation. I mean, I already know it. That's how I get anybody anyway. When I'm talking to somebody and they just sit there and dominate the conversation, they talk over and over and over again, I just shut down. Well, at that point, I've already zoned out because I'm like, this guy just likes hearing himself talk. And you don't get anywhere just liking to hear yourself talking. Everybody else has already shut down and already zoned out as well. So I think it's important is to create a safe space for everybody to be able to express how they feel about a different subject or a different problem that they have going on. You can practice respectful disagreement by role-playing scenarios. So you can share examples of various disagreements or various things that are going on and just role play the situation. And just role playing anyway helps a lot with personal development as well, because you're able to walk through different problems that of course bother you. And so I think it's important to I think this is one of the major tools that anybody can use. Okay, if I'm bothered by if I'm a Democrat and I'm bothered by everything Republicans say, I think it's important to go with a friend or you and a friend sit down and just role play the different things that you're bothered by. So when you hear it again, you're better prepared. Some tips for practicing are start with low stakes disagreements, focusing on one technique at a time, and reflect on your communication style. So understand, some people are very emotional when they talk and communicate. Some people are not. Some people are very nonchalant, laid back, and calm. But it's important to reflect on what you're doing. This also plays in the importance of self-reflection. Recognize your own biases and assumptions, and be open to change. And be open to changing your mind. You don't take anything away from this episode. I want you to take away that respectful disagreement is crucial for building healthy relationships. Your way of doing there's two ways to solve a problem. There's actually multiple ways to solve the same problem. But just because you found a way to solve it one way doesn't make everybody else wrong for the way they solve it. Also, I want you to use one of these techniques. I mentioned plenty of techniques in this episode that you can use to help with disagreements, but I want you to at least use one of them. You don't use any of them, just use one of them. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back with you for another one. Peace.